Oh, Mikey,
Hey,
you know
Vinnie.
how to get me in good spirits, pal.
My pleasure. And I'm in good spirits as a result, too. Music is a powerful medicine whenever
It
applied liberally.
it really is. First of all, good morning. It's Mikey and Vinny. He's Michael Knight. I'm New York Vinny. We do this every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday morning, right here on YouTube and on Facebook, and anywhere else that wants to steal it from us. You're welcome to it. Take it.
And we'll give credit to Billy Joe Royal and I Knew You Win from Spotify. There's a commercial for everybody involved. I hope that covers the bases.
One of the
Yeah,
great,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
He didn't get he
Mike,
didn't get carried away. It was an emotional day for Billy Joe. That's all. It was an
Billy
emotional
Joe
day.
was having a little fun. Billy Joe was rocking. He was coming
Yeah.
off of Down in the Boondocks,
Oh
which
yeah.
was
And he went on to have a country career after his
yeah,
pop days on Top 40 Radio.
yeah. There's lots of Billy Joe Royal on YouTube if you want to check him out. Obviously Down in the Boondocks. Well, there was another one he did too that was really popular in '66. Cherry Hill.
I remember that.
Remember that?
It was like
Cherry Hill
a suburban
was such
story
a
of
thrill at night after
yeah.
dark. Da 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 da.
It was
Every
a
night we would go to the.
strange story about a community in New Jersey where I don't know what was going on.
I
There
don't
was,
think that was the. I don't think it was about a community, Michael.
I think it was. There were many people involved. There was a
I
whole
don't think.
school of thought in
I think
Ontario.
it was a song about a woman, a girl named Cherry Hill. Was as we used to say back in the day, easy.
She was available. She
She
was
was
interested.
easy.
She
You,
was compliant.
Yeah, she would. Well, not, yes, she was complaining. Yeah, as a matter of fact, sometimes she would grab you by the shirt and haul you off. We we we,
Thus is the story of Cherry Hill.
we tend to forget those days nowadays in this whole world of Me Too and this and that.
Well, I toast you with my coffee on this freaky Fractious Friday, Vinny.
A salud, a salud, a salud.
Salud.
As as Batista was saying, as Michael Corleone was leaving.
I'm wearing my Giants hat to try to get some mojo going again. We've lost a couple, had a tough time in Toronto. And I guess the Mariners didn't have as tough a time as the Oakland A's getting perfect gamed out of their virtually empty stadium. That was kind of heroic and historic and sad at the same time.
And nobody saw it. Now, have you ever seen either a perfect game or a no hitter?
No hitter. Saw it at Candlestick Park. There was about 1,000 of us left. Dodgers against the Giants, and it was the tall blonde-haired guy. Man, what was his name? And there were so few people that we moved down behind the backstop, and nobody stopped us. And we, were cheering for a Los Angeles Dodger to complete his no-hitter game.
It's amazing how that happened. Now, I saw Nolan Ryan's last no-hitter. Was at the Oakland Coliseum, and it was funny because I was supposed to go the night before. I was supposed to go, and I went with, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I went with Annie O'Toole and Mary Kahn from the Great American Music Hall.
I knew you when
you were, and we weren't supposed to. We were supposed to go the night before, and I couldn't go for some reason, so we switched the tickets. And we had like first base line seats, and it was great. It was awesome. I want to go back to the music, though, for a second, Mikey.
Go right ahead. I'm trying.
People don't, well, I guess many people realize that if you became attuned to music, what a great 2 years. Let me put it like this. What a great 2 years to be attuned, to start to enjoy rock and roll music. 1964 and 1965. I mean, there were so many great bands out there. And there was a lot of Beatles and everything, but there's also so many other good things going on. And if that's what the hook of music was for you. If those two were the 2 years, I'll throw 63 in there too. But rock and roll had been in kind of a malaise in 61 and 62. And 63, 64 then with the Beatles, 63 really with the Beatles, but 64 them coming over in 65 and even 66. Those 3 years, if those are the years that you got turned on to rock and roll,
you were on your way.
You got to, because unlike the doo-wop people that got turned on to the music in the late 50s, or the psychedelic people that kind of came in the in 67, 68, those 3 years, there was a little bit of everything. I mean, and such great, like Billy Joe Royal. Who was the other guy? Why am I forgetting his name now?
Gene Pitney, he had a voice like
Gene
that.
Pitney. Thank you, Gene Pitney. That's exactly who I was thinking about. Yeah, Jay and the Americans.
Yeah,
with She Cried.
If you had a big voice and you had the right song, you could have a hit out of somebody's garage, and you'd never get paid for it, but you'll be on every jukebox in Queens.
You'll be on every jukebox in Queens, you son of a gun. But it was just such a great time to get tuned into music. And also the other thing that we forget is that, we don't forget it, we know it, most people probably do know it, is that AM radio was in its
heyday.
Maybe the best 4 years of AM top 40 radio. You had jocks that were, banging you with the boom, 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 the rapid fire delivery. Hi, everybody, and you had, the stations were out there promoting. They realized how much personal appearances and stuff like that.
Constant contests. When one contest would end, they would debut the new contest, and it was a big deal because they were going to give away $1,000 an hour, or a Jaguar XKE, or a trip to Mexico. These were not little prizes. They were big deals.
And you would go to the beach, and I remember the summer 65, summer 66. You'd go to the beach, man. And everybody had a radio, and it was on one or two stations.
Yep.
Actually, we probably spent more time in the summer listening to two stations at the same time, WMCA and WABC, than really anything. And it was, and so you had great music being presented by incredibly great people to a mass audience who, as we talked about the other day, was the social media of the day.
And it was the number one market in the nation.
And it was unbelievable. It was such a time. How could you, as a kid who, not get hooked into both music and radio at the time? Because there was so much going on, but yet that was the one thing that you had control over.
The funny thing about the stations that you mentioned, and it happened in San Francisco, Los Angeles, and New York at about the same time. The old school station, WMCA, KFWB, KEWB, got supplanted by another station on the dial that said, "You guys are interesting, you're good guys, but we're hipper than you. We are KGB, we're KHJ, we're KFRC, we're WABC.
We're you were the good guys, but we're the all Americans."
And they just grabbed, with their positioning and their aggressive music presentation, they grabbed the headlines, they grabbed the lead. And WMCA and KFWB were good guys. They weren't prepared to be boss jocks, and they got out hipped. And it happened all across the country in major markets where you could afford the talent.
Well, and it was interesting too, because I think as a kid, now maybe this was just me, I don't know, but I think it spreads to other people too. You always had this illusion that these guys were all great friends,
Yeah.
all hung out together. There was, the Jock Lounge is where they lived, and the way they talk, and especially in the marketing was so good with the good guys, with the WMCA good guys, because the WMCA good guys would come on and sing songs together. They'd sing their jingles together. You know,
Wow, good
I mean,
idea.
I remember there was a pack up all your cares and woe. Ba ba ba. There we go. We're the good guys.
No.
Yeah, they sang their jingles, and let me see if I'm going to look and see if I can find one. I know there's a great website with all of these WMCA jingles.
And what happened to
Um,
WMCA? It became KMBC?
no, WMCA is still going. It's a Christian station now. It turned into a talk station. It was one of the country's first all talk station. It had a guy named Barry Gray.
I remember him. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it was immensely popular. And they went 10-10 wins went all news. They birthed the all news format,
The Westinghouse format.
the Westinghouse format, the Westinghouse wheel. And then you go down the dial at 570. WMCA was a great rock and roll station. But I think about 68, maybe 60, yeah, probably 68. One day they pulled the plug.
Wow. Yeah. And it became a talk station right
And it
away?
became a talk station owned by the Mutual Broadcasting Company for many years. I don't know who owns it now.
So was it ever owned by Music Corporation of America?
I think it was.
Okay.
Yeah, I think originally. Yeah, I think it was originally owned by
And the call letters are still MCA and it's at 570 in New York?
still MCA, still what do you call it? Yeah, still there.
Wow.
It was but they, it was funny because it was like this perceived battle
Oh, yes.
between the good guys and the all Americans, But the good guys, WABC, I don't think had any promos with Jock singing. They had the greatest promo they had was the Cousin Brucey theme that was cut by the Four Seasons. That thing was, I mean, you listen for that theme every night.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Let me see what this, I'm going to just punch this up a second and see what it gives us. WMCA jingles of the 60s.
Air checks. By Radio Mania. Is the greatest WMCA on US 57. First on your dial. WMCA. First on your dial.
They love those long jingles.
I want the good guys jingle.
Play the big hits, you dig hits, we play all the day. Bet your bottom dollar you'll lose your blues. Guys, and we're here to we're good guys, we're fun guys, and we're here to say it's such fun to play the big hits, you dig hits, we play all the day. Bet your bottom dollar you'll lose your blues with the good guys. The fun guys, the guys that hit the spot and spot the hits.
Oh, the hit the spot and spot the hits.
You'll dive to the left, you'll get a lift, you'll hear sound, you're really gonna dig. Big. Our boss told us just yesterday, you have such fun, don't ask for your pay. We're broke guys, but good guys anyway.
Every way.
I mean, I don't know who did that, who came up with that, but it was a bit of genius.
Who was the program director of WMCA?
I don't know. For the life of me, I have no idea who the program director was. But boy, oh boy, because it gave you that feeling that you knew them. They were your uncles singing in at the Thanksgiving party, or the ones who weren't saying how bad the world was turning. And it's man, oh man, it made you feel. And then they had this other trick, which was they gave away good guy T-shirts, good guy sweatshirts.
Red shirts, yeah. In fact, Keith Richards is wearing one in a famous Rolling Stones photograph.
And I think other stations had them too, outside of New York. I think maybe the mutual stations probably had the copyright to that. And when you were a kid in 1963, 64, 65, 66, 67, you wanted a WMCA Good Guys sweatshirt. And the only way you could get it, unless your father worked at the station or you were an advertiser probably, was to get the what do you call it? Was to get your to call up and win it. Yeah,
They gave them away every hour, I hope.
Yeah, I don't know if they did it. I think they gave one away a show or something like that. And if you saw somebody walking down the street with a WMCA Good Guys T-shirt, they were cool.
They had achieved greatness in the neighborhood.
They had gotten in on the phone, because you never could get in on the phone. Especially, remember, in those days, you had to dial the phone. So,
I take it back. It wasn't Keith Richards. It was Eric Burden and the Animals who had the Good Guys sweatshirt.
Oh, man.
In their picture.
Yeah, because the famous Keith Richards picture is the one where he's wearing the T-shirt that says, "Who the is Mick Jagger?"
Still to be answered to Keith's satisfaction, I might add.
Probably. I actually have that shirt. And actually wore that shirt to a Stones concert. Me and my friend's brother Rob wore that shirt. When coming out of the concert, a photographer saw us for the Philadelphia Daily News and snapped our picture. We made the second page of the Philadelphia Daily News.
Beautiful.
At the 81 Stones RFK Stadium concert. It was awesome. I still have the newspaper clip somewhere.
Excellent. Good job. Did they spell your name right?
Yeah, they did. Yes, it's Rolling Stones fans. Rob, what was Rob's last name? I forget. Rob and Vinnie Riccici asked the magical question. And they printed it, but they blacked out the UCK.
Who the foo?
Who the F is Mick Jagger? Oh man, yeah, those were just great years too. You got an education, but again, it was good guys were. You believed that they were all hanging out together. You all Americans. You believed that they were all hanging out together. And when the Cousin Brucey theme came on, everything stopped in New York. Everybody was listening. You could hear it.
6 o'clock or 9 o'clock?
I think it was 7. Yeah, they did an hour of news between 6 and 7.
So he came on after. So 7:05, 7:06.
Yeah, so like 7:05. Well, I don't know if they had a top of the hour after the full hour, because that was the hour that you had the national news, the local WABC news,
Howard
Cosell. Speaking of spots. Oh man, those was the days.
A network sports show. Imagine that.
Yeah, and it got you hooked. I'll tell you what, as a kid, it got me hooked into sports. I was in baseball. I like baseball. I always liked baseball from when I was a real little kid. But this like hooked you into this hooked you into other sports that maybe you didn't know all that much about.
Did you happen to see yesterday, in honor of the perfect game pitched by Jermaine of the Yankees against the A's the other night, ESPN pulled out one of their documentaries about perfect games called Perfect. And it follows like 20 pitchers through their preparation that morning, how they felt on the mound, each inning of the game, and it's all intercut. And then when you get to the end, some of them lose their game. They lose their perfect game in the 8th inning or the 9th inning. Some of them go out and finish it up and go into history. And how it was just the luck of the draw, a line drive here, a foul ball there that made all the difference.
Yeah.
It was so well done. And it was remarkable how you can't control your fate always. Randy Johnson was talking about his perfect game with Arizona, and Don Larson about his perfect game in the World Series, and 20 pitchers. Not Jerry Royce, by the way, who pitched a no-hitter for the Dodgers. That's the guy I was trying to think of. I witnessed his no-hitter, not a perfect game, but a no-hitter. And the beauty of the game was that they felt that they were in control some of the time, and other times felt that they were completely out of control, that the whole thing was happening without them. A couple of them said, I had never been into a baseball game in the 8th inning in the National League before. I'd never pitched that far. They always pull you. Pitchers don't get to pitch into the 8th and 9th innings unless they have a perfect game at stake and the manager says, give it a shot. But if you get in trouble, you are gone.
Yeah.
Well,
even with no hitters now, they pull people.
Yeah. They'd rather have the win than give them the shot at it. But it was the overall impression of these guys was they weren't ready for it. They had a special day, but they didn't see it coming. They had control that they hadn't had before. They had situations and help that were dramatic to the game, remarkable catches. And some of them just put one down the groove and they got launched into left field and they lost their game in the 8th or 9th inning, which was, and looking back on it with time, they weren't saying, if I had only done this, if I'd only done it. They just said, if you knew anything about baseball, you know that these things are out of your control. There's going to be a guy like Manny Sanguillen hit one out of the dirt and, put it down the field, the third base line, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Jimmy Quayle, I'll never forget him. Jimmy Quayle's, I was there at Shea Stadium, 1969. Tom Seaver's got a perfect game going into this 9th inning.
Look out.
1 out. Up comes Jimmy Quayle's. Who the hell is Jimmy Quayle's? But you know what? He had Seaver's number. Launched one out into boy, I'm trying to think now. Was it left field? I think no, right field. No, left field. Yeah, left field. Launched one into left field. It was a legit hit. And there goes Seaver's perfect game.
Just like that.
Just like that. You could feel the air come out of the stadium. And then they gave Seaver, geez, it must have been a 5-minute standing ovation. It must have been, I mean, a New York crowd, man, they don't dick around, man. Everybody was on their feet. Everybody is clapping.
And they knew they had seen something that they were never likely to see again, no matter what.
Right. And at that point, that was 69. Seaver was so loved. I mean, he's always been loved.
Right.
But his, that was the epitome. It was the top, of the year that was going right for the Mets. It was late enough in the season where they had started to make their move up the standings. Remember in August, in early August, the Mets were 9 out, 10 out, and they were the Mets.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, boom, boom, they started winning games, and they won them freakishly.
Freaky Mets.
Not just by power. There wasn't a lot of power hitters on that team. It really clicked when Clendenin came over.
Don Clendenin with 2 ends.
Don Clendenin with 2 ends. When he came, when the Mets signed him, and remember he was not retired, but he couldn't play because the Expos had traded him. Oh no, he'd been traded to the Expos. And he didn't want to go. He said, I don't want to go.
I'm sorry, I'm not going there. But Don,
I'll go home.
Yeah.
And they finally, the Mets worked the deal out with the Expos. I forget who they sent them. And Clendenin came to the Mets.
And that he was happy he did.
Yeah, and that lit the spark under the Mets that really got that, and also Seaver, was unhittable in August and September. I don't know that he lost the. I have to go back and look. I'm sure he lost one, but I don't know that he lost the game in August or September.
Those are the days. Those are the days you must win.
Yeah, and don't forget, guys are going out there and throwing complete games, even if they lose.
That was the way it was.
And then of course, if you do get pulled out, you got Tug McGraw coming in, Nolan Ryan coming in. You're facing a 21-year-old Nolan Ryan who's throwing he's throwing a ball past you faster than you've ever seen in your life before.
May not be a strike, but it might have been. It went by so fast we didn't get a good look at it.
The thing with Nolan is you were trying to not, because he was wild in those days. That's why the Mets got rid of him, because they thought, he says this guy's got speed, but he's wild, and you get in there against Nolan Ryan, you don't know where that ball is going.
So it's the same thing with Randy. God, the big unit was an unpredictable guy earlier in his career.
Yeah, that was that was the those days, but that was that was, and then the perfect game. And I don't know if they showed this in the documentary that I saw, but I saw it on television, and we'll never forget it. Was Father's Day 1964. Jim Bunning.
Senator
Jim Bunning of Kentucky, I believe, threw a no-hitter against the Mets at Shea Stadium. And I remember we were watching it on TV. It was Father's Day, and my father and I were watching it on TV.
Wow.
And I didn't even I don't know if I really 100% understood what I had just seen.
Right.
But it was great. It was awesome.
Bunning talked about it. He was featured. He said, if I get this game the way it's going, I'm going to have to win it with an off-speed curve, because all I have is an off-speed curve. I don't have 6 pitches to offer. I never have. I'm never gonna. So the off-speed curve is going to have to win it for me today, or we're done.
Well, luckily he was facing the 64 Mets, where you could probably throw just about. I'm trying to remember exactly who was. I think that was like Joe Christopher and Ed Kranepool. They finished 53 and 109. And that was an improvement over 63.
That was the answer to the question that Casey wanted answered. Can anybody here play this game?
Yeah, it was. Oh my God, it was unbelievable. I'm just trying to look to see quickly if I can see. Oh, you know who was on that team? Chico Fernandez.
Hey, Chico, good to hear from you.
Frank Thomas was on that team. Frank Larry was on that team. Remember him? They traded him for Dennis Rybant.
Yeah. Jerry
Kuzman was signed that year. He didn't come up. Was signed as an amateur free agent. Let's. It looks like they had about 100 people on the roster, but let's see if we get some names here. Fat Jack Fisher, Jay Hook, Al Jackson, Frank Larry, Tom Parsons, I remember him, Tracy Stallard, who was with the Yankees, he came over, Dennis Rybant, Tom Sturdivant, and Carlton Willie.
Carlton Willie,
you remember him? He looked like he was a skeleton. I remember getting his baseball card and looking at it and going, holy moly.
That can't be right. This is a misprint.
It must have taken. And then 64, I think, was the year that Ron Hunt got into the collision and separated his shoulder. But Roy McMillan, Ed Kranepool, Bobby Klaus, or after Ron Hunt, and I'm trying to think of who the third baseman.
Yeah, and you sent Ron Hunt to the Giants.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And Johnny Stevenson, Chris Cannizzaro did most of the catching. And he was always one of my favorites. In the outfield, you had Jim Hickman and Frank Thomas were probably the most notable names. Joe Christopher, George Altman. George Altman was a decent player. But by the time he got to the Mets, he wasn't.
That day, they couldn't put a bat on a ball, apparently.
And then you want the coaching staff?
Is Peanuts Lowry there?
No, but you got Mel Harder, it's the pitching coach. Don Hefner is the third base coach. Sheriff Robinson is the bullpen coach. And your favorite and mine, Wes Westrom.
Wes Westrom had to be there.
Yeah, was the first base coach. Yeah, because he took over for Casey in 65. When Casey broke his hip, fell and broke his hip.
And he had a long, distinguished career with the New York Giants as a catcher.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, that's, I mean, at that point, the whole idea of the Mets were to bring in 62, 63, and 64, the whole idea of the Mets was to bring in as many ex-Dodgers and Giants as you could find. If they could walk,
get them out to the ballpark.
They get them out to the ballpark. Top RBI guy that year, this is how bad they were. Joe Christopher had 76 ribbies.
And that was it.
And he was the top. Matter of fact, he was probably their best player. He had, Hickman was pretty good, but Joe Christopher in right field had 163 hits and 543 at-bats, 76 ribbies, and he stole 6 bases.
Wow.
16 home runs.
Roger Craig was not on this team?
No, Roger Craig, I think, was gone. I think he pitched in 63. I'm pretty sure he pitched in 63, but the starters, yeah, he was the ribby guy, 76 ribbies and 106. He played 154, but it was 162 schedule.
I have to tell you this anecdote from that show yesterday. David Cohn of the New York Yankees pitched a perfect game. It was a celebration of past Yankees. Don Larson was the guest of the Yankees that day and was in the press box watching a perfect game in the very stadium where he threw a perfect game in the World Series. And David Cohn, before the game, said hello to him and said, I saw you when you pitched your perfect game. You jumped into Yogi Berra's arms. And he said, you got that wrong, kid. Yogi Berra jumped into my arms. And let me tell you, he was a heavy package with all that equipment on. And it's true. If you look at the finish of the Don Larson, he staggers off the mound. He was absolutely, he had not stage fright, but he was
hungover.
He was astounded by what had happened. And I'm sure the whole team was hungover.
But he was hungover because he had been out drinking the night before at the Copacabana. My father worked at the Copacabana as a bouncer and saw him. Him and Yogi. Matter of fact, I have a picture somewhere of them sitting at the bar in the Copacabana. And I asked Marty Appel, who was the longtime Yankee PR guy, and he told me, he says, yeah, they were out. They were, those days the players went out at night, boosted up, and came back the next day.
When Larson showed up at the stadium, the ball was in his shoe, which was the way they notified you that you were starting the game. But no one had told him anything the day before. No one had said, Don, we're thinking of this and we're thinking of that. You be ready. You could start tomorrow. It's the World Series. You'd think they might have mentioned it. But it was the World Series, and they didn't mention it. They just put the ball in his shoe, had no idea that he was out the night before, had no idea that he was ill-prepared. But he had his command that day. And the funny part is, he was the one to catch Yogi Berra. Yogi Berra jumped into his arms like a child. And Don Larson said, all I remember about that was Yogi was heavy.
Yogi was small, but he was heavy.
But he was wide.
Oh, my God. Let's see. Who in 64? Yeah. Hilarious. I mean, I just look at some of these names, they bring back such memories. But the pitching rotation was Fat Jack Fisher, Tracy Stallard, Al Jackson, and Galen Cisco. And of course, Al Jackson is famous. Oh, yeah. What?
Yes, Al Jackson is famous because he gave up a certain home run.
He gave up a home run. He gave up 715, right?
He gave up 715. And I'm trying to think of who, and he never lived that down. He became associated with it because you always show the highlights, and I'll be damned, he's on the mound every time that Hank Aaron hits that home run. Check that replay 20 times, he's still the pitcher.
He's still a pitcher. You can't change him. There was empirical video proof of it.
And when the Giants won the pennant, and they had that home run in the ninth inning in the Polo Grounds, was that Sal Maglie? That was the pitcher for the Dodgers.
Bobby Thompson off of Sal Maglie. Yeah. Yeah.
By the way, I never get tired of hearing.
No, I think it was Ralph Branca.
I think you're right. You're right.
Yeah, I think it was Branca.
And Branca's,
they always toured together.
Yeah.
Thompson and Branca they were friends, and
sign
they
a
would
ball.
go out and sign baseballs and stuff for years. Yeah, Branca. Yeah, he hit it off of Branca.
I do believe.
Oh,
famous, the wonderful Russ Hodges losing his composure. He lost his mind, and so did everybody else at the Polo Grounds. From 13 games back, the Giants win the pennant.
Again, I've been in stadiums all over the place, ballparks all over the place, and there's nothing. It's the Broadway of baseball.
Yeah,
I mean, people, go nuts. They run out of the stands. I mean, you saw that how many times? Now you saw it in Atlanta with Hank Aaron,
right?
But now you rarely see it. And in New York, when you didn't see it all the time, but when they won, a World Series game like that, or they won the pennant in that kind of fashion, people. I mean, I remember in '69, man, we were on the field three times. We went on the field a night. I was there the night the Mets clinched the division, which was a new thing. That was the first year of divisions.
This is new. This is a funny feeling.
Yeah. And then it was the night they won the playoffs, the first ever playoffs in Major League Baseball. They beat the Braves. And then you had the World Series.
Wow.
So three times we ran out of field. Matter of fact, I remember some guy fell off the scoreboard. He climbed up to the top of that scoreboard.
Yeah, that'll happen.
Scoreboard.
What are you going to do?
Won't see him anymore.
Can we have his tickets, please?
He got tickets for the next game.
Tickets for the next
Check
game.
his pockets.
Check his pockets, exactly. That's what I'm thinking.
Hey, in New York, believe me.
In New York, when you're down, you're down. We're sad. It's an awful thing, but let's check his pockets just to be on the
you ain't going to be able to use them. Yeah. At the very least, you're going to be listening to this game from your hospital bed. And at the very most, you ain't going to be listening to anything anymore.
Today, Vinnie, Kristen and I are going to be the Commodore and Tutu. We're leaving shortly to go to Woodland Hills and take up our very serious Commodore and Tutu. What's the word I'm looking for? Protocol. There you go.
There you go.
The protocol. But before we go, something happened on the television today that I wanted to bring to you. There's this girl in the car commercial saying, I paid $12,000 for my brand new car and I didn't even have to haggle. And I went, whoa, wait a minute. You bought a car and you didn't have to haggle? What? And you think you got a deal because you didn't have to haggle? And I thought, haggle, that must be a Yiddish word. And I looked it up and it's not, it's English. It means to argue persistently. And if you don't argue persistently over a car deal, you're going to regret never having to learn how to haggle, because it's not if you got a deal that you're happy with and you think it's a result of not haggling, boy, do you have something to learn about buying a car. And I thought about the parts of the deal. The car deal is a pretty simple thing. It's made complicated by the process. But there's the trade-in, there's the price of the car, there's the down payment, and there's nothing else. You got to play with those numbers until you're happy. And if you don't haggle, those numbers are not going to be happy until they take your money.
Well, the problem is though these days is there's more than just the price of the car. There's what they call the menu, and that's the add-ons that the dealers what is it, hydrogen in the tires, I forget what kind of gas they put in there, clear coat that they put on, that they want to put on the car, etching the windshield and the glass so they can tell if it's a stolen car, um,
Mhm.
extended warranties. You can add, if you're not careful, you can add 10 grand to the cost of a car like that.
Which of those would you add to a
I wouldn't
purchase?
add any of them.
That's what I thought.
What, you're putting hydrogen in my tires or whatever it is? That's okay. I'll go to Costco and have it done. They'll do it for free, or maybe they charge you like $10 or something like that. They can do it there. Extended warranty. Well, if you're telling me that I should buy an extended warranty, first of all, I'll go out and find one privately because the dealer's making money on all of these.
Oh yeah, this is where he
Tons
makes
of
his
money.
money because the bank owes the car.
Right. What's the other one? I mean, there's a bunch of them that are ridiculous. That when you look at them, but the etching is the one I love too. They etch the door glass. If they steal the car, uh, the thieves won't be. Or you think the thieves haven't figured out a way to beat the etching?
They'll de-etch it.
But they'll
You
but
etch.
they'll do that. And I was just helping a friend of mine buy a car, and I mean, every dealer we went to was you got to buy this, you got to buy that, you got to buy this, and plus they wanted to charge over MSRP. So
For the pleasure of doing business with you.
yeah, you got to haggle. I mean, it really, you know, and that's why one of the reasons Tesla is so successful is because they don't haggle.
They won't haggle. They don't haggle.
It costs $57,500. If you want it, sign here and drive it home.
Out the door.
And that's because the Tesla stores are owned by Tesla. Their marketing guy came from Apple. And I had a long conversation with him a few years ago at the Detroit Auto Show. And he explained to me that we want to break, just like we did at Apple, where we opened our own stores, and
Right.
you could, you come in and buy it from us. We wanted to do the same thing with Tesla, and it's really interesting because dealers. We're at a crossroads in the business now. Dealers are, the car companies are trying to get rid of the dealers.
Mhm. How did they charge you over MSRP? What was their theory about that? This car says right on the window $30,000. You want to charge me 45. Explain to me.
During the pandemic, cars were in short supply. If you wanted one, it's legal for the dealer to add on whatever they want. They call it, they call it a dealer pack. They call it. I mean, they can disguise it in several different ways. But the S in MSRP is
Suggested.
right.
Everything is a suggestion.
When you can't get cars because there's a pandemic, because there's a short supply,
And I
the
suggest you pay
suggestion
more.
goes out the window.
The suggestion gets more insistent. That was a $10,000 suggestion. What the hell's going on here?
Really, that's a bad suggestion. Yeah, there was still, if you go to buy, there's certain models. Like if you want to buy a Ford Maverick pickup, which I drove a couple of weeks ago, you'd be hard pressed to find a dealer that has one. But if you do find a dealer that has one, you're probably going to pay $5,000 over MSRP for it because they're in such short supply.
And that just goes right into the dealer's pocket.
Right. Z06 Corvettes, if you want one, you could pay up to $25,000 or $30,000
over
MSRP because it's a limited edition car.
And that would be a total of what then?
Well, on the Corvette, I think that Z06, I think it's about 110,000. So you're going to be good for 120, 125 before you move that thing out the door. I'm going to look real quick.
I went by a Corvette the other day. We were right next to each other in traffic. It looked like it was hard to see for the driver. Am I wrong about that? It looked like it was hard to see where you can see around you.
Yeah, I mean, you got a little bit of blocked vision in the quarters, obviously, but you have your cameras now that you turn on, and those cameras, the cameras in the Corvette, you can look all around the car. So with the touch of a button, 106,395.
That's the MSRP.
That's and if you get the carbon fiber wheels, and if you get a fully loaded model, you can put the sticker price up to 160, in the neighborhood of 160,000.
Brazen pricing.
And then you're going to pay 25 or 30 over that for the dealer. So but it's an American Ferrari. I mean, the car is. It's just it's a dream to drive.
Do you think a car like that would get away from the average dude who's never driven a Corvette before?
Get away from, you mean in power?
Yeah.
I personally think that to get a car like that, you should have a special license.
You should at least some sort of training.
Yeah, not just the Corvette, but all of these cars that are, you look at what cars are now, even these electric cars. The horsepower, I mean, I'm driving a Toyota this week, a Toyota Crown. It's a hybrid, and it's got, I don't know, 300 something, almost 400 horsepower. I drove the Bronco Raptor a couple of months ago, and has 700 horsepower.
Where are you going? Where are you going, brother?
Top speed, they govern the top speed of, I think it's 150. But when you hit the gas on that car, you better know what you're doing.
Yes, that's my point. Yes.
You better, yeah. And I have long been an advocate of, to drive that kind of car, you should have to have a special certification. You should have to go to Department of Motor Vehicles or some testing facility and show that you have, before you get the car, that you have the ability, the agility, the common sense, and the knowledge of the car.
Because getting on the freeway, you can have your rear wheels come around and say hello to everybody and not know what to do about it. And it'll happen so quick, you wonder what did happen.
There are several. If you go on YouTube and you just put in car accidents, I forget what it. There are several high performance cars.
Oh yeah.
That you see, that, factory high performance cars. Now, the factory will argue that these cars are safer than if people go out and do the modifications themselves. At least this comes from factory, it's tested, and there is some truth in that. There's always been high performance cars that people get into accidents in, because you're operating it, especially in an urban environment. You got some nitwit that's going up Highway 99, trying to show everybody at Dick's that he can, squeal the tires. The next thing you know, he's in the window of the car dealership.
Oh, yeah. Can't quite remember how he got there.
Yeah, I really think, especially if you're 18 years old.
Bad combination.
I mean, you can be 18 years old, and if you got enough money, you can go into a dealer, and you can buy yourself
700 horses,
700 horsepower Challenger, 707 horsepower. What's the one? The SUV. I'm thinking the SUV, the Chrysler SUV, or Dodge SUV, or Ram, I guess it is. And that's even worse, because that thing's 2 times heavier than the Charger.
It's coming through the bank wall.
And now these electric cars. The electric cars are almost double the weight
Really?
of the gas. Yeah. The new Silverado pickup truck is pretty close to 10,000 pounds.
And what's the heaviest thing on it?
The
Not the
battery.
frame. Wow, yeah.
The
And if you
battery
have two, and if you have two batteries, you're really heavy.
battery's humongous. So you got a car, and this is something else that's going to come up here in a short time. You have heavier cars, you do more damage to roads with them. So what are you going to do with these cars? Are you going to charge an electric car more money?
At the gas.
No, not at the gas, but just to register it. Because if you have a 10,000 pound truck, you pay more money than if you have a 6,000 pound pickup, because trucks, it's by weight.
Right.
So now all of a sudden, these cars are doing more wear and tear on the road. I'm actually trying to get a hold of a guy for drive time to talk about this, because I think it's something that nobody's talking about with these cars. But so now you have a car with 700 horsepower that's 10,000 pounds. That's why you see all these headlines of people killed.
That's
I
how
don't
they
even laugh
did.
about it. It's not.
Yeah, that's how they died, just like that.
But and the car's out of control. The guy driving the car can't. And they have all these great new gadgets in the cars that make the cars stay in the lane and this and that. But you still got to be able to control it.
But people still have the same sort of mid intersection collisions where I didn't see him turn right. I had a green light. No, you had a red. And those mid collisions, when you get T-boned out there in the middle of the intersection, you better hope it's not a 10,000-pound truck, because you'll get knocked into next week.
Although with some of these systems, they will that kind of collision will be mitigated. Like the Crown I'm driving has a LiDAR in the front that if I'm driving down the boulevard here and I start to come close enough to the car in front of me, it puts the brakes on.
Can it find a Mayan religious
No.
temple in the jungle?
It may be able to. I don't know. I'm not.
LiDAR.
Neither I or the car are going to the jungle anytime soon.
Well, that's a shame. You might find something important.
Now I haven't. I would love to test it by just going through a red light and seeing if it hits the brakes when you're.
Here's my 10,000-pound test.
But I don't. I wouldn't take a chance on that.
Well, if you enjoyed talking about cars, Vinny's got a show tomorrow at 8:00.
Yes, 8:00 in the morning. Please join us for Drive Time Radio. We'll be right here. We'll also 11:50 a.m. in the Northwest in Seattle and its environs. And we'll be happy to talk to you about cars. The vintage racers are in town this weekend.
Well, that's better than the Republicans.
Yeah. Oh, much better. Down in Pacific Raceways. It's always a fun thing. I always did it in Pittsburgh at the Pittsburgh Vintage Grand Prix. It's a lot of fun. Here they do it at a raceway. In Pittsburgh, they do it through Shenley Park, which is really cool.
Shenley, is that a beer?
There's a liquor. I
It's
think it's a scotch or a whiskey. Shenley. I remember from when I was a little kid, there was a bottle of Shenley in the pantry.
Shenley. There you go.
And when my mom, Shenley and Four Roses. And when we get toothaches, my mom would and rub it on, That's why I think I liked Four Roses so much when I first started drinking.
Not one rose, not two roses, ladies and gentlemen, but and the
Four
WMCA
Roses.
Good Guys. Sing the jingle. You're going to love it.
All right, Mikey. Listen, have a good weekend.
You too. Have a great weekend. Have a good show tomorrow at 8:00.
Thanks, man. I'll see you before 4th. What's 4th of July? Tuesday, right?
The Independence celebration comes on the 4th of July this year. I just wanted to mention that. I'm glad you reminded me. 4th
of July. All right, I'll talk to you later, man. Take care of yourself.
What a wine.
Yeah, man. Peace, love, and yeah, I'll see you. Don't mind my head. Peace, love, and Manischewitz, baby.
See you, Vinny.
All right, Mikey. Take care. There he goes. Michael Knight, and there I go. And please tune in tomorrow morning for Drive Time Radio. We'll have a time like you've never seen before and may never see again. Bye-bye.